Well, a lot of people yelling in the background of a big party. Not me, though. Talking to you guys about Stevie Wonder.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason, Joe, and Krams are here. We got a big week this week. Joe, I'm sure, is very excited. A lot of requests for this one for months now. We're doing Stevie Wonder finally. A lot of albums to talk about, 26 in fact. 23 of them are real studio albums. 3 of them are soundtracks that kind of function as studio albums. There's a Christmas album in there as well. So a lot of records. First one came out in 62, I believe. So going way back. So time to get into it, I guess. Quickly, our experience with Stevie. I know the hits. I had a big greatest hits compilation. And over the years, I'm sure I've heard pretty much like the classic era, full albums, but I've never gotten hugely into him. So I wouldn't say I knew any of the full records deeply. So how about you guys?
Yeah, knew all the hits, like most of the hits, and never listened to an entire Stevie Wonder album until a couple years ago, where we were doing albums of the year and Joe was picking them. So I did listen to Talking Book and Songs in the Key of Life. Spoiler alert, like Whitney Houston, I think the Christmas album is the best. So no, absolutely not. But this was a lot to unpack. Real spoiler alert, jokes aside, I did very much enjoy this. However, it was a lot to do in, a quick time. I think I need to spend more time in general with it. But the coolest thing is just getting this, 50-year just like timeline and just really seeing him evolve from just a young lad onto just a god, and then, and beyond. Very cool. Very cool week.
I love Stevie Wonder. He made a bunch of my albums of the year, songs of the year, but I didn't know every single album for this week. However, I did have a big head start. I definitely don't envy either of you listening to 26 albums from any artist, especially when you don't. I mean, with Stevie, you kind of at least know like what the classics are, but to have to listen to everything and then like go back and take notes and all this stuff. So I'll forgive any trespasses that you have made. So I knew a lot of these, but there's a bunch that was new to me as well. So I greatly enjoyed going through his whole catalog. Now I can finally say I've listened to every Stevie Wonder album. So it's check off the old, not bucket list, but, laundry list of musical quests.
And it was generally kind of a tough week for me to work through because I don't listen to a ton of R&B and stuff. So my notes seem like kind of like elementary and stuff. And I look at, I can't get into the nuance and compare and contrast other things that I know. So it was a good learning experience for me.
All right, before we jump into the rankings, for anyone new here, we do this every week. We take a different artist and do a deep dive on the catalog. Sometimes they are artists we know and love. Sometimes they are new to us. Sometimes we actually don't even like the artists we talk about. You never know what you're going to get. If that sounds cool or something you'd be interested in, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. And we're going to go 4 at a time, kind of rattle off some of these weaker records until we get to the top 10. Then we'll go one by one. Who wants to kick it off?
I think you should, then me, and then Joe.
All right. Number 26 for me is going to be Conversation Piece from 1995. First of all, an atrocious album cover. Looks like a cheap compilation from a gas station. Just really horrible cover. And the record's not much better. The bass is super fat. He's kind of like doing a New Jack Swing thing a few years late, kind of after that trend had sort of passed. Doesn't really work. It is kind of a decent approximation of that sound, but it doesn't fit his writing. He kind of, I think he always did a pretty good job of staying up with the times musically, but his writing didn't evolve with that, and it kind of became like a mismatch between lyrics and sound at times. So that's 2 stars. Number 25, I've got Characters from 1987. I think this is a pretty lame record, really generic 80s production. Even a single with MJ in 1987 could only get to number 80 on the charts. The material is really weak. All you're left with is bad synth sounds. The biggest hit was Skeletons, which just sounds like an 80s like commercial on Nickelodeon or something. It's really, really bad. 2 stars. Number 24, I've got Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants. This brings a swift close to the classic era. It's a soundtrack to a documentary, which he scored. The problem with that is, I don't know if you guys know this, but Stevie's blind. So he actually had someone describing the movie to him as he scored it. It doesn't work at all. A lot of the instrumental, synth-heavy, new age pieces are really boring. There's some real songs as you get a little deeper into it, like on the second half of it, but it doesn't justify the long runtime. Flower Power, Send Out Your Love, Black Orchid, those are all kind of cool, but not going to get me to ever listen to the whole thing again. That is also 2 stars. And then moving up to 2.5 stars, number 23, I've got A Time to Love, the most recent record from 2005. This was his first in a decade since Conversation Piece. I think it's slightly better here, but the modern production doesn't fit the material at all. Sweet as Somebody I Know could be cool, but it sounds like he's trying to do like Maria Maria by Santana. It's kind of like his attempt at that sound. Moon Blue is pretty jazzy ballad. Demonstrates without a shadow of a doubt that Stevie still could like deliver the goods. Vocally still sounds great. Unfortunately, he delivered them in this kind of like mangled package of crappy 2005 production. So 2.5 stars for A Time to Love.
Ivet's Red Now is my number 26. I got it at 2 stars, and I am right off the bat introducing my Achilles heel for the discography, which at times really hurts it. I hate that harmonica sound. Absolutely hate it. Can't stand it. I know. So it's really tough for me at times. I think it's really ugly. Alfie just can't do it. It's everywhere on this album. It's awesome that he performs everything here and does everything. So cool. The arrangements are nice. They're originals, but I just don't like the sound. Can't get it over. And it's just not that memorable to begin with. 2 stars. Number 25, Conversation Piece. Still at 2 stars. Like Jason said, sounds pretty dated for 95. Would sound really nice for 89 or so. I don't like the drum sound, pretty lousy. It's a weird blend of like old school Stevie and New Jack and New Soul. Like you said, the writing doesn't catch up with the style. And there's not enough of that good Stevie musicality. A lot of him just kind of singing over drum beats, kind of. There's like that cheap, sensual sexuality of the mid-90s too. Not many memorable tracks. One of his tackier efforts, and tacky is regularly a thing you can say Stevie Wonder is. Number 24, I also have Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants. I can't believe Joe is like apparently really in love with this album, given it's mostly weird and instrumental. And, you know, I don't buy that Joe actually likes this. But it's odd. It's got that weird futuristic synth. Obviously in the early stages of like those big synth scores that come out. There are some really nice moments. I like Voyage to India, and I like Come Back as a Flower, I think is really pretty. But, you know, the entire album doesn't really do it for me. And then number 23, sticking with the soundtracks, got Jungle Fever, still at 2 stars. I like the style and the sound, and I like it for the movie, but for an album listen, doesn't really do for me. Everything's kind of like congested. I think he's kind of lost in the role of scoring. I don't think it's his best thing. There's no big hooks, not a lot of musical earworms. And then some odd choices that I don't like melodically, the way he says, you know, Queen in the Black, doesn't really do it for me. So 2 stars, number 23, Jungle Fever.
That was probably the worst thing I've ever heard from you guys. No idea what you. Number 26 with Song in My Heart. This one stinks. 2 stars. I do not like young Stevie much. And I do not like his take on these like classic, you know, When You Wish Upon a Star. I don't need to hear that from Stevie Wonder or anyone else. Number 25, Jazz Soul of Little Stevie. I don't think 12-year-olds should have a jazz soul. There's nothing here that I want to hear again. 24, I got Stevie at the Beach. I think the songs are pretty weak. All the beach theme stuff, Castle in the Stand, Ebb Tide, Sad Boy, Red Sails and Sunset. Most of the first half's instrumental. There's, the Party at the Beach House. You really want to hear that again. 2 stars for Stevie at the Beach. And I'm going to go up to 2.5 stars for Evitz, whatever, Red Now. 2.5 stars. Easy listening. Instrumentals are just not my jam. Doesn't matter who's playing them. And this is, a step down, especially after he had already done Uptight and I Was Made to Love Her. So then you get something like this, and it's just like, come on, we've moved past this part. If this was like his first album, that would be different, but pretty weak. Although, I mean, obviously the harmonica and the keyboards and the drums and the percussion that Stevie plays is pretty impressive, but just not interesting.
All right. First of all, as far as the rankings go, nothing Kram or I said should be that controversial. I think we're fine. Kram saying he doesn't like the harmonica is maybe a step far, but my number 22 is the Jazz Soul of Little Stevie, instrumental jazz album by a 12-year-old. Again, like Joe said, some songs, all he's doing on this is playing the bongos. On others, he's playing harmonica. It's a really weird introduction to Stevie Wonder and doesn't give you any idea of who he is as an artist because, I mean, he's a 12-year-old kid. I mean, it's kind of cool, funky little slice of 60s hipness or whatever, so I don't mind it too much. But I definitely wouldn't turn to this, for my Stevie fix very often, I don't think. 2.5 stars. Then I've got Ivets Red Now, another instrumental album. This one gives you a lot more of Stevie, though, especially the signature harmonica sound all over it. I love it. His playing is really great. Great keys, really great drumming as well. You've also got Jamerson and Benjamin, so can't go wrong there. It's kind of a minor work, but it's not bad. Number 20, Jungle Fever. This one's a soundtrack. Like most music from this period, it sounds very dated. The production's not very good, but there is an energy to it and a vibrancy to it and some decent tunes, at least. Fun Days, very upbeat and fun. These Three Words, I think, is a good ballad. Stevie's voice is way up front in the mix on this album, which helps block out some of the production flaws. I think vocally he sounds really good on it, especially on Make Sure You're Sure, which is kind of a jazzy tune, like a jazz trio with strings. That's definitely a highlight on that record for me. Probably the best song on any album I've talked about so far. I'm staying at 2.5 on that one. Then I've got The Woman in Red, another soundtrack. This one from the mid 80s, 1984. I think this is probably the best of the soundtracks. Really, really dated though. Extremely like 80s to the max. Super synthed out. A lot of really weird like synth pop tunes. Really corny duets with Dionne Warwick. It's just pretty full on 80s. The keyboard sounds on I Just Called to Say I Love You are insane. They're so weird, but work somehow and with this like cheesy, corny song. I don't know. I like it a lot. That's that one. But before I move on from that, Don't Drive Drunk at the end is an absolutely crazy song. Basically a PSA, but somehow it's so catchy. Like it could have been in March Badness, but like I find myself enjoying it. So is it a good record? I don't know. It's a weird song, but interesting.
All right. I'm already up to 2.5 stars, so decent albums on, and I've got Someday at Christmas, just nothing exceptional, and it's a Christmas album. How good can it be? Number 21, I've got Tribute to Uncle Ray, all Ray Charles covers. Great tunes, obviously, but, a child doing them doesn't really do it justice. You need kind of that adult, charisma behind it. Number 20, that one was also 2.5, and so is number 20, Stevie at the Beach, 2.5 stars. You hear his voice growing a little bit. I think he's like 14 or 15 here versus like 12 or whatever. But it's pretty gimmicky, early 60s pop. Record companies kind of did this where it's like, do a Christmas album, do a beach album, do this, do that. Very company driven, but, lead off Castles in the Sand, pretty good. Not bad. More instrumental stuff than the two before, but again, you can kind of take it or leave it. And then number 19, 2.5 stars for Woman in Red, the soundtrack. I think the title track is very weak, not a good hook, but everything else on it is decent. I think he's a great melody writer, obviously. Sometimes, though, when he's off, he's very off. And I think on this album, he comes off pretty off, unfortunately. There's some corny stuff. It's way too soft. I Just Called to Say I Love You is like my least favorite of his hits, but it's still decent. I actually love Light and Flight a lot on this album. I like the synth lead a good bit. Some fun stuff. The duets aren't great, but the goofiness of Don't Drive Drunk is friggin' awesome. I really dig that song, actually. I have no problem with it. I think it's a lot of fun. And there's a lot more humor and adventure in him than I really realized. And it's pretty cool. So just needs more highlights, needs to be edged up a little bit, but not terrible. 2.5 stars, Woman in Red, number 19.
Number 22, I got The Woman in Red. I think it's a pretty weak effort. I think it sounds much more dated than the songs he'd written for Original Musicarium just 2 years earlier. And it doesn't have anything on In Square Circle the next year. Love, Light, and Flight's okay, but it's too long. Don't Drive Drunk is fun, but I always have hated I Just Called to Say I Love You. It's definitely my least favorite of his hits. And just not a great album. 2.5 stars there. Although I do like Dionne Warwick and his duets. They're nice, pleasant pablum. Number 21, I got Tribute to Uncle Ray. I think it starts off pretty strong with the first couple tracks. Hallelujah, I Love Her So, and Ain't That Love. But then it kind of just goes downhill. Like Kram just said, he needs like some sex behind the vocals. He doesn't have the charisma yet. He's only 12 friggin' years old. So I don't know why they would give him a bunch of Ray Charles songs other than the fact that they're both blind. So that's kind of icky if that was the reason. Number 20, Someday at Christmas album, 3 stars for this one. What Christmas Means to Me, obvious highlight, one of my favorite and one of the best of the 60s, Christmas new classics, I guess you could call them, ones that you can still hear on the radio to this day. Everything else is pretty good and, good instrumentation, better singing from Stevie. He's a little older now, stronger voice, but it's a Christmas album. Number 19, we're going to do Down to Earth, his second from 1966, but I think it's a pretty big step down from Uptight. I do like A Place in the Sun, good opener. It's like it got a little Tijuana brass backing instrumentation in there that adds some nice color. Doesn't sound just like a Motown song, so they're trying something different, which works, but I think Mr. Tambourine Man, not a great cover. I don't like the arrangement much. So it's an okay effort. It's 3 stars, but I think they give him a lot better material elsewhere. So only 3 stars for Down to Earth.
My number 18 is Someday at Christmas. Always hard to rate and rank a Christmas album. I think this is a pretty decent one, though. It's got a little mix of like classic Christmas songs and lesser known tracks, although none were actually written by Stevie. Still, like in this classic Motown era, Stevie's voice sounds great throughout. You still have the Funk Brothers in tow, so there's some nice grooves on it. And the highlight, I think, is What Christmas Means to Me, which is a classic at this point. That one was penned by Anna Gordy Gay and George Gordy and Alan Story. Pretty good Christmas record. No Shame at number 18. My number 17 is In Square Circle from 1985. This continues with his heavy use of synths and bad 80s production, kind of like Woman in Red did. Very slick and processed sounding record. Far cry from his classic period, both in sound and in songwriting, I think. Having said that, I still think there's some good pop writing here. Part-Time Lover is cool with its kind of like man-eater aping groove. Spiritual Walkers is pretty weird tune. Stevie's singing about door-to-door evangelists with like this weird Mario Brothers sounding effects in the background. Land of Lala is his ode to LA, which I think is extremely corny. And I think that's the thing about this era of Stevie. It's not really good, but his sense of rhythm and his conviction in his singing is so strong that he can make some of these bad songs still feel pretty cool. And songs that shouldn't work like that, he can kind of get away with it. So 3 stars. Number 16, I've got Tribute to Uncle Ray. Bunch of Ray Charles covers. You guys have talked about it. I don't believe Stevie really plays on it. I was looking for stuff. I think he's basically just singing on this one, backed by session players. He's only 11 though, and his voice is definitely not what it would become. Not even as charismatic as like a young Michael Jackson in the Jackson 5. Still, I have trouble being too hard on it because, he's working with good material and he has quality musicians backing him. It's fine, but inessential. It's kind of the label figuring out what to do with him. And the only reason I can figure for it existing is that he is blind like Ray Charles. So that's kind of weird. Number 15, I've got With a Song in My Heart. So after the Ray Charles record, they take a crack at having Stevie sing standards. And it was an attempt to make him more marketable to a crossover white audience. It has a lot of the same problems as Tribute, but it doesn't really give you a sense of who Stevie is. But I love standards, and I wouldn't call this a great standards record even, but I do think the arrangements are really good by Ernie Wilkins. I think the strings and horns and everything sound really good. It's really well recorded. So even though it's not like a great Stevie record, I think, it's worthwhile, at least in that sense.
My next 4, starting with number 18, I've got In Square Circle, 2.5 stars. It's decent, all in 80s mode. Part-Time Lover does sound a lot like Maneater. For the first bar of it, I was like, is this Maneater? Did he cover them or did they cover this? Like, I was so confused for a bit. And then I found my footing. Whereabouts, some of his worst lyrics. He's usually pretty good with the lyrics, but at times he gets a little too obvious. That's a good example. Songs are pretty hit or miss on here. There's decent sounds. I don't think this 80s production on here is nearly as corny as Woman in Red. But I don't think the slow stuff works on here. I think the more lively stuff does. I do like Strangers on the Shores of Love, and I kind of like Land of La La. Overall, it's decent. Number 17, I think Joe's not going to like this one. I've got it at 2.5 stars. I've got I Was Made to Love Her. Again, the harmonica, not really doing it for me. But there is some pretty good songs on here, no doubt. I just found it a little bit unmemorable. And the strength of Stevie comes in his own writing. There's still a lot of originals on here. His voice is gaining some sensuality, which is really nice. My favorite song is probably Every Time I See You I Go Wild to close it out. But just a little bit too much of the boring, not boring, but just the Motown standards a little too much. 16, I've got With a Song in My Heart. 2.5, some good stuff. I actually like When You Wish Upon a Star. It's a softer touch on this album. There's kind of whimsy all around. There's like some sweeping kind of Disney-esque romance. The arrangements are really nice, but again, it's a kid. And then number 15, I actually have this much higher than you guys. I've got Jazz Soul with Little Stevie Wonder, and can't really knock him for being a little kid here because it's not really singing. So it just sounds like a pretty decent, 60s jazz band going around. A lot of kind of Latin flair, bongos and stuff. It's kind of adventure-filled downhill jazz. It's pretty cool. Not something I crave, but pretty good stuff to have on in the background. So I thought it was decent. That's my number 15.
Right. Number 18 for me is me Jungle Fever. I like the, Jason can't be trusted when talking about 90s or 2000s, R&B, soul, anything like that. Just don't listen to him. Jungle Fever is pretty good. He got a little New Jack swing in there. I think it continues mostly with the sound from Characters. It's funky. It's upbeat. He's not Prince or Michael Jackson at this stage of his career, but I think he's a good third place in that race. Fun day, nice lightweight pop number. I think Stevie still sings fantastic. His voice is amazing. I love the bass line. And it's just so impressive what Stevie does, playing bass and the drums and singing and playing all of it. It blows my mind. I don't think he plays quite as much as the instruments at this point, but when he does, it's all really great. And I like Queen in Black, and I like Kimberly Brewer singing If She Breaks Your Heart solo. It's a nice little change up. Good solid 3.5 stars. Also 3.5 stars for Time to Love. I think it's formulaic, but this is 24 years later and Stevie still sounds great. or 14 years later. I don't know. I can't do math. 14 years later than Jungle Fever, but I think Stevie still sounds great. Production pretty standard 2000s, kind of adult contemporary R&B, but I think the songs are good. If You Love Cannot Be Moved, duet with Kim Burrell is great. Sweet As Somebody I Know, just a good, modern R&B. Got some big harp in there, and kind of cheesy stuff like that. But when you get like the group vocals coming on the chorus, I think it's great. And when he strips down the sound on something like True Love, I think it sounds great. It's just piano, upright bass, jazzy drums, little saxophone, just all, relying on Stevie's voice. Probably So What the Fuss is the worst track, which is unfortunate because it features Prince and En Vogue. But that one definitely sounds like he's trying too hard. Number 16, I'm going to go with Conversation Piece from 95. I think it's a pretty solid album, very energetic for a dude in his 32nd year in the industry, or 33rd even. Definitely 90s sounding, which obviously that can be a big turnoff for people. Not really for me, because everything is based around Stevie's voice, which sounds great. And something like Taboo to Love, it's kind of a cheesy ballad, but man, Stevie just owns it. I like the fluttery orchestration. Songs like Rain Your Love Down, I think, just exceed the sort of rote 90s production behind them. Treat Myself got a great groove to it. I think Cold Chill is awesome. Prince style melodic funk. And Sorry sounds like Narada Michael Walden's work with like Whitney Houston. So kind of got like a club banger feel to it. So you can say you don't like mid-90s R&B flavored pop. That's fine, but I think it's wrong to say this isn't a good album. It's just not in a style maybe that people prefer. But I think it's very good. 3.5, almost 4 stars for that. And 15 is gonna be My Cherie Amour from 1969. We're up to 4 stars here on out. This is during, it's tough to jump around like this with an artist like Stevie. So we're like well into his Motown hit making phase at this point. He's got the Funk Brothers, James Jamerson on bass and just kicking butt. I think these tracks sound fantastic. Title track is great. Stevie's vocals really get better on every album. So much more control, soul, and passion. And some really good songs. Hello Young Lovers is a good one. But at last, not my favorite of his covers, Light My Fire. I think he tries, but that's a really tough one to pull off. Yesterday could have been real cheesy in the wrong hands, but I think he does it really good. And you got some like vertigo-inducing bass from James Jamerson on that one. So a good album, but probably my least favorite of his Motown phase before his classic phase, after his 12-year-old phase. So we got to get through the phases here.
All right. I think I forgot to give my stars in the last round. All 4 of those were 3 stars, and we are moving up to 3.5 for Stevie at the Beach. Motown's stab at hopping on the popularity of all things beach. Of course, you had the Beach Boys, who were huge at the time. And also the first Beach Party movie came out just the year before this did. It didn't really connect with audiences at the time, but it's not bad. I kind of like hearing a Motown take on this sound. I really like the sun-bleached haziness of Ebb Tide here, which is done as an instrumental with Stevie on harmonica, which sounds great. Really excellent string arrangements, especially on Sad Boy, where Stevie also gives one of his best vocal performances up to that point in his career. I think you can start to hear his voice maturing a little on this. His harmonica playing, like I said, is great. It's clearly not a major artistic statement, but I think for fans of the era like myself, it's a very interesting kind of piece from the time. And I found it to be quite enjoyable. My number 13 is My Cherie Amour. Even though he was still under the watchful eye of the Motown machine, I think by this point, Stevie had found a really unique artistic voice, especially on records like I Was Made to Love Her. But My Sharia More kind of feels like it's sort of like the fifth album in a row of the same sound with like very little artistic evolution. There's also way more production here, strings. It feels a little over-arranged, overproduced. There's also weird song selections, like Joe mentioned, Light My Fire doesn't really work. It still has some great tunes. Of course, all the hits are great, I think, on it. His version of At Last, I think, is really cool with James Jamerson going off a bit on it. I think it's a good record, but I think you also get the sense listening to it that maybe Stevie wants to push beyond what he's been doing over and over again at Motown. I think maybe this is the record where that feeling is the most pervasive. He seems almost maybe a little bored with it or something. I don't know. Number 12, I'm going with Uptight. This is where I think Stevie starts to put things together a little bit. The voice is starting to mature. The Funk Brothers rhythm section here turns up the R&B a bit. Stevie gets a nice handful of co-writes on this album as well. He covers Blowin' in the Wind, and I think he does a good version of that. Works much better than his version of Light My Fire. The title track, obviously awesome. So is Nothing's Too Good for My Baby, which has just some incredible drumming on it. The doo-woppy Contract on Love with the Temptations on backing vocals is pretty cool. Although that track, I think you can hear that it was recorded like before his voice changed, whereas most of Uptight is not like post voice change. So you can see that in real time happening. I think it's a good bridge between the early Little Stevie stuff and the hit machine that was to come. Kind of the first taste you get of the true Stevie Wonder. Number 11, the last one before we get into the top 10, and my first 4-star Stevie Wonder album is For Once in My Life. This is another one where I think you see Stevie just kind of in the groove of the Motown machine. Really, really great playing on it. Incredible rhythm section, Uriel Jones on drums, and of course Jamerson on bass. Stevie's writing and singing getting stronger and stronger on every record. But I think to a degree you can see that Motown just influence on what he's doing, maybe putting him a little bit in a box. Every song has that signature Motown sound, not a lot of deviation from that or surprises. And it doesn't seem to be saying all that much artistically, not making much of a statement, just a lot of love songs. But having said that, it's all really good. It's all high quality songwriting, really good performances. It sounds really good. And I like God Bless the Child. I think that one kind of sticks out as being a little different from everything else. The Billie Holiday tune. You get some bigger orchestration on that one. Stevie slays it, lays down an incredible vocal performance and a really, really good harmonica solo on that track as well. So very good record For Once in My Life. Number 11.
Okay, my number 14, A Time to Love. Still a 2.5 stars, but I'm kind of with Joe. I kind of like the modern production, but this is the only album where I don't like the way his vocals sound. There's some weird reverb effect on it, and I don't really think it does it justice. He's still obviously singing great, but I think they kind of injure it a little bit. And you don't really need to do anything to his voice, but they decided to. It's just kind of a dumb move. But I do kind of dig some of the old takes or the new takes on his old sound, like on Sweet as Somebody I Know. I think Moon Blue is like a cool little like lounge jazz piece. Voice is still there. His voice never really sounds like it ages at all. It's pretty incredible. You know, some of the sounds though are awful. So not all the production is there. Like Don't Hurt My Baby has that weird Flintstones like sound effect when they're running. It's like, it's like, well, why is that in there? That's really peculiar. My Love Is on Fire is decent. Some of the harmonica I still can't get over, like Tell Your Heart. It has its moments, and True Love is really cool, especially with that sax. Number 13, and now I'm up to 3 stars, so I think there are 13 Stevie Wonder albums that I like. Down to Earth almost has more of an old school feel here, throwback of sorts. Bang Bang is cool. Thank You, Love, maybe my favorite on the album. Lots of sweeping romance here, like Sylvia, really great. Kind of like the Mr. Tambourine Man version. 16 Tons is cool. Number 12, really shocked Jason had this that low. I've got Characters. 3 stars still. You Will Know I dig. I like that keyboard bass part. I really dig the keys on Dark and Lovely. Love that 80s style. And I feel like there was an opportunity for him to really he made one really great album in the 80s, but it was 1980. So I feel like he could have just done better of kind of adapting this to the 80s production style. I feel like it's right there for him. Like, when you hear that song, that's just like Maneater, and you're like, you could be right in there with the Hall and Oateses and all of that stuff, but it doesn't quite get there. And I think a lot of it is what Jason was saying, like the writing doesn't catch up with the style. But In Your Corner has that really nice, perky 80s charm. It seems like it should be like there's even a little bit of all kind of 80s stuff on this album, and it just seems like it should be like his masterclass, all-encompassing 80 albums, but just misses. Get It with Michael is pretty cool. Everything is good. There's hooks. They're just not the most memorable hooks. So it just tops off at 3 stars for me, which is good. And then number 11 at 3 stars, I've got Uptight. Band is really hot here. His voice is matured and sounds great. Love a Go-Go is awesome. Blowing in the Wind, I don't think is a good cover, actually. I don't think it dressed up in R&B is good at all. But Nothing's Too Good for My Baby is really awesome. It's got that signature sound coming in big time. It's like just giving you the here I come, Stevie Wonder sound coming at you. Teach Me Tonight is mad fun. Uptight is an absolute banger of a song for a reason. Pretty Little Angel is great. Very close to 3.5. And I've got a few more 3s coming up that are all very close to 3.5. So a lot of good albums here. Uptight, number 11.
All right. My number 14 is going to be I Was Made to Love Her. 4 stars for a little while now. I think the title track is just one of the great Motown releases. James Jamerson's bass line, one of the just classics of the era, one of my all-time favorites. And you can just hear Stevie's vocals getting stronger again. This is a very Motown-y record, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think, besides Marvin and Smokey, Stevie's like right there. I guess I sort of wrote off this era of him, other than, I love the singles, obviously, but I think a lot of these songs, pretty good numbers. You got a lot of the Holland Dozier Holland stuff. You got the Funk Brothers. So definitely kind of overlooked this era, but I think these are all great. And I think Stevie's originals, or at least co-originals, he starts to get a lot of writing credits on these songs. And they're all really good. He wrote Tears of the Clown around the same time for Smokey Robinson. So his style and his sound already, developing pretty strong here. I Cry is a great one. Some Lovin' has a great piano part. Like the backing vocals for the Andantes and the originals on this. Or is it just the Andantes? I think it's just the Andantes on this one. Number 13, I got Characters, and I do disagree with you guys. I think the writing itself is still good. I think he's still a good writer. I think the production, I do agree with Kramzer there. He didn't push the envelope at all. Like this to me sounds a lot like Bad from Michael Jackson. It just kind of sounds like of its era. In the 70s, like he was creating the sound, like he was creating those synth sounds and doing all that cool stuff with the, clavinet and everything. And in the 80s, it's really just kind of following the trends. Dark and Lovely, though, rules. I love that killer, absolutely amazing synth bass, just hammering, just drives the song. Great twisty riff with Each Beat of My Heart. It's pretty kind of, I don't want to say cheesy. It's soft rock, though. But it has this like proto Boys to Men feel with all the multiple vocal tracks and arrangements around it, which I think sounds pretty cool. One of a Kind, another great vocal arrangement. Stevie's getting a little more help. And it's almost like Fulfilling This is first finale, where there's a little bit more than just Stevie. And it just provides this richness, this lushness. It's like vaguely R&B. It's still very pop, and I think it's good. It's not Prince, it's not MJ even, but I think it's pretty solid for 1987. Number 12, I got Uptight. Motown finally figured out that they should just give him, good songs. So that helped his career because this was kind of like the last chance for him. They didn't know what to do with him. They kind of thought they were going to just like lose him completely after his voice changed. But fortunately, they stuck with it, and his voice just got better. So they gave him a song like Love a Go-Go, which is just such a Smokey Robinson, classic Motown feel, the marching band drums, the big bright brass, horns are like hopeful and hesitant at the same time. Hold Me's just super pretty. I think Blown in the Wind's a good cover. It's not a Bob Dylan level, song when Stevie sings it, but I think it works as an African American protest song really well. Nothing's Too Good for My Baby sounds like Uptight, but like slightly different. So it's good. But Uptight, obviously certified classic. Contract on Love, like Jason said, his vocals get a little rough. It's that teenage voice running wild, and it just sounds completely out of place. But saves it with the last track, With a Child's Heart. Great soulful Smokey Robinson territory. A really cool mournful harmonica solo at the end. Number 11, down to last one before we get to actually talk about these albums. Rushing through, I got For Once in My Life from 1968, title track. Love the Someone Who Needs Me, and just like the big booming, symphonic everything. Just a killer tune there. Love hearing the Horner clavinet pop up. I think for the first time in You Met Your Match. Shooby Dooby Doo Da Day, good single. I don't know why. Tour de Force and Emotion. Love the horns and the strings, adding just enough amount of drama. You got that clavinet again lurking ominously in the background. Great bass line. Sunny's great. House on the Hill, God Bless This Child. Stevie Wonder has a writing credit on a bunch of these songs as well. So obviously he's injecting a little more personality in there. I think the production, I don't know, maybe it was just the version I was listening to, didn't sound quite as good as some of the ones around it. But totally holds up, I think, to this day, singing great. So just a great album. So yeah, For Once in My Life, number 11. And now let's do the top 10. Let's get to the good stuff.
All right, kicking off my top 10 with another 4-star album. I've got Hotter Than July. After listening to Secret Life of Plants, I pretty much wrote off Stevie being very good again. And then you put this on him, bam, he comes out swinging. The first 4 songs on this record are killer. The production's a little sterile, but aside from that, it's just some of the coolest, funkiest, and weirdest tunes in his catalog. He's playing a lot with his vocal delivery on this. He's doing like this bizarre country thing on I Ain't Gonna Stand For It. He's doing like this short staccato delivery on Rocket Love, which is super cool. This record was heading for 5 stars out of the gate, but I think the back half really fumbles things. Lately is a good ballad, but other than that, just really a tale of two halves for me. Nothing on side 2 is really that bad, but I find it pretty uninteresting. Yeah, and like I said, I'm not crazy about the way it sounds. Kind of getting into the 80s sound a little. I don't know, every studio in the world switched out their consoles and every record started sounding terrible around this time. And Stevie was not immune to that. But I mean, the first 4 tracks on this are some of the best songs, I think, in his catalog. I absolutely love the way this record starts. So on the back of those 4 incredible tracks, going 4 stars and reaching the top 10, Hotter Than July.
Right. My number 10, kicking off the top 10 with Where I'm Coming From. Got it at 3 stars, a strong 3 stars, completely different vibe just a few seconds in, really cool. Getting very contemporary with his lyrics, full of kind of social commentary, it seems. You're not getting as much of the Motown or soul, but there is some of that funk with that clavinet coming in, thematically with Do Yourself a Favor. Kind of has some cool heavy rock organ on it as well. Looking back, this got pretty rough reviews for being pretentious, self-indulgent, and not nearly as good as What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, but I think it's perfectly fine. It's fun. It's a great step forward for him as an artist. doesn't quite grasp like his other material, and it's not as good as What's Going On, but it's very cool at times. If You Really Love Me has like everything you want. I think sometimes the music becomes a little bit less focused, but I'll figure out the balance very soon. I Want to Talk to You is cool, kind of like messy in a cool way. Take Up a Course in Happiness is nice. Maybe a little out of place. I think one of the reasons why I can't get this 3.5 is I don't think this album has great flow. And I think one of the best things about him as an album maker is there's usually tremendous flow to all of his albums. Like, it's really hard to get out of the groove of the albums, to want to skip tracks. It all paces and moves really well. Never Dreamed You'd Leave in the Summer. It's one of his big first grand piano ballads. A bit unexpected and needs a little bit of work. I think he'll master that style. But I still really appreciate what he's doing there. And I am just kind of surprised at how little recognition this got at the time. So 3 stars for me, Where I'm Coming From.
All right, I'm with Kramzer with my number 10. I got Where I'm Coming From. And yes, it always gets left out of the classic run that would start next year. And I kind of get it because it's not quite there. It's just like something missing. Like he's still, I don't know, like being held back by the Motown sound, despite him having complete writing credits on this. Him and Sarita Wright, who was his wife at some point, believe. I don't know if it was during this or not. I can't remember. This one just doesn't quite have that polish. The production doesn't sound like it does on Music of My Mind, where it's just like super clear and like 70s like. I do like the neoclassical clavinet, the darker tone, the more mature voice. It's much less upbeat and positive than Signed, Sealed, and Delivered. Great organ on Do Yourself a Favor, super funky. That's definitely a step forward. You can kind of see that style developing that he would master on something like Superstition. If You Really Love Me sounds like his 60s Motown hits, which is not a insult at all. It's a great song. Got the big brass accompaniment, the way Stevie like revs up the vocals and then kind of just lets it sit down is really cool. The dynamic shifts are great. I Want to Talk to You. The old man voices, the kind of like Fat Albert stuff that he's doing, like it's playful and kind of cool and interesting, but it just kind of wrecks the flow a little bit too much. I think he would just get much better at that in the next couple of years. Really like Take a Course in Happiness. Kind of sounds like Elton John, like with Fixing a Hole like, as the bass line or something. But it's a fun song, cool horn accompaniment, maybe like a Tin Pan Alley feel. Never Dreamed You Leave in Summer, Sunshine in Their Eyes is good. But everything, I think in 71, this would be an impressive step forward, but in Stevie Wonder's catalog, where it's like Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, you get that fun, upbeat, and then Music of My Mind, you get that mastery of everything he was going for here. So it does get left out of the classic period, but I think it's still pretty strong, 4 stars, but it's tough to listen to this one and not be like, I'd rather be listening to Music of My Mind.
Number 9 for me, I've got Down to Earth. I think he found a direction on Uptight, and here he ups the ante. I think it sounds better. The recording quality, I think, is a lot better than it was on Uptight. I think his recently changed voice is getting stronger and more confident on this record. Be Cool, Be Calm, and Keep Yourself Together is incredible. The incessant tambourine on that track is so great. Incredible backing vocals, really great drumming. This record has a really cool transitional sound where it's like holding on to some of like the orchestration and prominent backing vocals of his early records, kind of hanging on to that in hopes of crossover appeal. But the grooves here are really thick. You've got just great rhythm section. 16 Tons doesn't really work too well, but the Sonny Bono pen Bang Bang, which was a single for Cher, I think is really cool. I really like his cover of Mr. Tambourine Man. I might like his version even better than the Byrds. I just killed Joe. Dylan's still the best by far, though. But this is a really cool record. I think it's a good step in the right direction. Strong Motown R&B sound. A lot of good tunes. So yeah, 4 stars for Down to Earth.
Right. My number 9, I've got For Once in My Life, and I'm up to 3.5 stars. I think it's very good. And I think it's the first really good album all the way through. Great balance, great variety, really a good blossoming effort. For Once in My Life, the song, I love it. It's got that ear to ear, like smile, joy, and positivity that I love about this era, like the soul and the Motown. But again, the harmonica bring it down a little bit. I like the harmonica playing. He's a great player. It's just something about the tone that doesn't do it for me. But I love the clavinet on Shoo-Be-Doo, ... I'm not going to pronounce that anymore. And it's got some swagger and attitude, finally. You Met Your Match is really strong. The songs just really roll along nicely and are really infectious. I Don't Know Why is awesome. There's like a touch of darkness to it that I think is unexpected, and a little bit of sting, which is really nice. Sunny feels kind of the same way. Song with really spectacular arrangements. I love the chipper bounce to Ain't No Lovin'. Do I Love Her is really pretty. And then it closes with House on the Hill. Good send off, nice and upbeat. Great bass. Everything's really coming together here for me on it. I think everything's pretty memorable. Like it a lot. 3.5 stars for Once in My Life. Number 9.
All right, number 9, going to the 80s again, In Square Circle. 4 stars still. I think it's a little dated sounding. Sure, everything was in 1985. It's the worst year in the history of music sounds anyway. Everybody sounded bad except like Kate Bush, basically. So you get some awkward synth sounds, a little wimpy sounding. That's, I think, my biggest fault with the album. Like that strong backbeat just isn't there for the most part. But Part-Time Lover, good fun, upbeat, buoyant. Got Luther Vandross, Philip Bailey chipping in on some backing vocals. And I think all these songs are good, well-written songs. I think Go Home is great, Land of Lala, strong, Never in Your Sun, Whereabouts, I Love You Too Much. These are all good songs. I think Overjoyed is great. It was supposed to be on Secret Life of Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants, which is why it has all those like plant and animal and water swooshing sounds to it. Makes a lot more sense on that album than it does in this one, but I think it's a really pretty, great sung song. And I just think it's a good, well-written song. This is his 23rd year in the business. This is his 20th album. It's better than David Bowie's 20th. It's better than Neil Young's 20th. Better than Bob Dylan's 20th album. Outside, This Note's for You, and Saved. So yes, it is. Definitely better than This Note's for You. Come on. And Kram's the only person on earth who has Outside at 5 stars, so can't trust him. His voice still rules, and I don't know. That's all I need. I need Stevie's voice and his synths and his songwriting. I think it's great. 4 stars.
Number 8 is I Was Made to Love Her from 1967. Jamerson with Benny Benjamin, which I think is the best rhythm section that he ever played with. Just incredible. The title track is killer. The bridge when the tambourine comes in and then Jamerson just kind of goes off. Stevie's going ham vocally, and it's just a great moment. Still a lot of covers at this point, though, too. He does Respect, My Girl, A Fool for You by Ray Charles, Please, 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 James Brown. He does a couple Holland Dozier Holland tunes as well. So it's still pretty early in his artistic development, but I think this is the record where he really starts showing flashes of greatness. And kudos to Berry Gordy and the people at Motown for seeing it so early and developing it. I think the originals here are all excellent. The sound of this record is fantastic as well, especially the bass might be Jamerson's best bass tone that he ever got. On I'd Cry especially sounds phenomenal. The horns sound awesome too. Stevie's vocals just have the perfect amount of like tape saturation to them, so it sounds incredible. Even though there are a lot of covers on this, I think Stevie does a pretty good job on even the most well-known tracks. I don't think he equals the original versions of the songs he's covering, but I think he holds his own on them. I don't think any of those covers are bad or embarrassments at all. So I think all in all, it's a very strong record. 4 stars.
All right. My number 8, I'm at 3.5. Very good. I've got Signed, Sealed, Delivered. Never Had a Dream Come True. Good song. Good song. Not crazy about it as an opener, though. I'm just going to say that. We Can Work It Out, written by John and Paul of half of the Beatles. Pretty fun. Yeah, this album is like bringing just a little bit more fun and celebratory nature, which is nice. Title track rules, obviously. I feel like, compared to Cherie, there's a little bit of like sweetness missing, but it's fine. Heaven Help Us All is decent. I do think it suffers a little bit from too much mid-tempo feelings. I think it could use a little bit more pulse, especially at the beginning. It doesn't quite grab me. It's a grower. You Can't Judge a Book by Its Cover definitely is awesome. That groove is mad hot, so it's an exception to that rule. Sugar also has some really hot, tight playing. Don't Wonder Why is really lovely. His feeling and charm is just unreal throughout his catalog. And it's weird. Like, I do think, he's obviously a great singer. I don't know if it's just like, and he's got a great voice, but it almost feels like he knows, like, he's perfect at knowing his limits. Like, he just knows what kind of singer he has to be, and he just nails it. Like, he knows his voice, and he just nails it. Like, I'm impressed by everything he does, but it never, like, blows me away, if that makes sense. Like, he's just perfectly restrained all the time, and always sounds great, and just beautiful. I don't know, it's weird. It doesn't blow me away, but I'm really impressed. It's a solid record. Takes a little bit while to get going. I love the punch in the drums on the song Joy. Starting to get a bit heavy and groovy, which you'll kind of get later on. It's close to 4. I just think it takes a little bit for me to really fall for it. So Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, 3.5 stars, number 8.
I think it's because Stevie Wonder is basically a perfect vocalist. He just always hits the right notes. Like he never... I don't think at every point he was just like trying too hard to like hit a note or like it's just always exactly what it needs to be. And
effortless to a point where like, how do you describe him as a singer? It's like, well, he's just always on. Like that's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, my number 8, I was hugely disappointed in your placements of this because I think this album rules. I got this journey through Stevie Wonder's journey through Secret Life of Plants, I guess is the official title. Journey through the Secret Life of Plants, whatever you want to call it. And, he just made Songs in the Key of Life, a double album plus 4-song EP. And it was basically perfect. Everyone loved it. Diamond selling. He basically done it all at that point. Like there's nothing left for him to conquer in the universe of music. So he goes a little crazy and decides to do a soundtrack about a movie about plants. And this is his trance. This is his weird, like, I've done everything, I'm gonna do something weird album. And, it's not even that weird. The first half, I think, is pretty, experimental. You got a bunch of instrumental tracks, Earth's Creation, which has that, like, big fanfare for the common man, kind of like grandiosity. Then you get something like Voyage to India, which I think is pretty cool. It's like big full synths trying to emulate an orchestra, a little aristocratic, classical. Then he shifts to the sitar kind of bass thing. Sounds like, fortunately, it reminds me a little bit too much of Shifting Sand World in Mario 64, which that's my fault. That's on me, not on Stevie. But when Stevie actually says to sing on Same Old Story, I think it's a gorgeous little simple piano ballad. He really cuts down on the electronics, which it's weird. It's like 2 halves because the instrumental stuff is very experimental. And then the songs themselves, he's got like a big moving stand-up bass, pensive like acoustic guitar, some harmonica. It's very like natural sounding. It's very vertiginous, as I like to say, verdant. Very green, very earthy. He's experimenting the Venus flytrap and the bug with the little, strange synthesized I'm a bug voice. And it's just like a lot of weird stuff going on, but I appreciate the weirdness. He doesn't want to remake songs in the key of life. He wants to try something different, try something new. And I think on side 3, when he gets into like the actual tracks, the actual music, the pop song, Send When Your Love is great. Outside My Window, Black Orchid's fantastic. I love the instrumental Ecclesiastes, just very dramatic sounding. Come Back as a Flower, which has Sarita Wonders, aka the formerly Sarita White, who helped Stevie write songs. Now she's singing on Come Back as a Flower and has this like real soft childlike vocals. I think it's just amazingly pretty. You got that fretless bass coming in again, really great extravagant piano, just pattering of drums. And then he ends it with The Seed's a Star. And I think that's just a really cool track, almost ELO, like proggy, really cool synth parts, but some funk and rock in there. Just completely unique though, unique, interesting. So I don't know, this one got panned pretty hard when it came out because it wasn't, Songs in the Key of Life Part 2. But I think it's just a really cool, interesting, diversion that he wanted to do. These kind of albums always get panned as, he lost his touch, it's overindulgent, pretentious. People have come around to it for the most part, not you two, obviously, but, critics, professionals. So they start to appreciate this one a lot more. And I think it's great. So 4 stars. I'm not going to go crazy or anything, but I think it's very good. 4 stars for Journeying Through the Secret Life of Plants.
If this album sounded exactly the same way and was done by a bunch of indie kids in skinny jeans, Joe would be like, this is the most pretentious thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, but they could never pull off something like that. So I don't have to worry about that scenario ever coming to fruition.
All right, my number 7. This is where it gets a little interesting. We'll see if you guys go straight classic era in the top 5. I am not. My number 7 is Talking Book. Getting a lot funkier here. The combination of the clav and the moog bass is just nasty on Maybe Your Baby. Stevie's backing vocals are really cool too. Sounds like they were probably pitched up a little or something. Ray Parker Jr. playing some killer electric guitar leads on that track as well. Obviously on this record, you got Superstition, which is ridiculous. Especially got to point out Stevie's fantastic drumming on that track. And throughout a lot of the catalog, he's really, really killer drummer. That's one of the greatest grooves ever laid down. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that. Looking for Another Pure Love. Has great jazzy chord changes and great guitar from Buzz Feitan. And of course, you got Jeff Beck on that track as well. It closes with one of my all-time favorite Stevie songs, I believe. Such a soaring chorus. And that one is all Stevie, just amazing stuff. So many vocal tracks going on and weaving in and out of one another, counter melodies and harmonies, and just awesome. I do think it is a flawed record, though, particularly You Are the Sunshine of My Life. You guys mentioned earlier your least favorite of his hits. That one is mine. I just find it such an odd opener. It sounds like a throwback to the My Sharia Moore era. Doesn't even start with Stevie singing. You got Jim Gilstrap opening with the vocals. Then you got a couple lines from Lonnie Groves. It's the only track on the record with real bass. The rest of the record, he's playing the moog bass. By the end of the song, the congas are just out of control. Stevie's vocals are weird. He's like doing some like weird, super deep lines. There's like some weird laughter in it. I don't know. It's just a really weird track and a really weird introduction to this record because I don't think it fits the rest of the record very well at all. Some of the other songs I think are just a little middling as well. You and I, Tuesday Heartbreak, Big Brother, Blame It on the Sun. So actually heading into the week, I felt like this might be my presumed winner on the back of I Believe and Superstition. But I was pretty underwhelmed by it this go around. I have heard it in full before. I still think it's really, really good. But for what I was expecting and for some of the other albums around this time period, it just felt like the weakest to me. So 4 stars, Talking Book.
My number 7 is Music of My Mind. I think it's great. 3.5 stars. Love Having You Around rules. It's a great opener. Love that deep sonic pulse. It's got some downhill like rock momentum too, which I really love them getting into. I believe they call this progressive soul, and it's awesome. There's some sexiness and just straight up cool factor coming to the surface here. It's artsy and mature for him, no doubt. The synths are really fresh and cool. Superwoman is awesome. It's really chill. He's playing with like a lot of just cool new vibes, little like soft jazzy elements. I love how the songs really expand out in like this almost prog style. Some of the guitar work on this album is absolutely filthy and sensational. I do think The Sweet Little Girl is a dud though, so it's not perfect. Happier Than the Morning Sun, bit of like a faux psychedelic folk kind of vocal vibe, really cool. Girl Blue has this almost American R&B hybrid shuffle to it. Seems So Long is a bit over the top for me. So he's like kind of tinkering with it, this perfection. Keep On Running is really cool. But I think when you get to this album, like, and his maturity and his artistic nature comes out, it also is like defining his sound, which is just so many things that just like come into this funnel, like R&B and jazz, and eventually he'll do like a little bit of disco stuff and, you know, funk and all of this stuff. It's really unique, and, you know, the melodies are tight. Everything's working here. It's close to 4 stars. 3.5, Music of My Mind, number 7.
Right, we go Hotter Than July for my number 7. We're up to 4.5 stars. You know, a comeback after everyone didn't like Secret Life of Plants. So he had to go and make a hot little record. So kicks it off, fantastic. Did I Hear You Say You Love Me? All I Do, Rocket Love, I Ain't Gonna Stand For It. Like Jason said, amazing start to it. I love the faux country of I Ain't Gonna Stand For It. It is so bizarre. But it is just so awesome, so unique. I want a full-on country album from Stevie. He even does like the really low he just completely nails it. And this album, I think, really celebrates like all these different styles, which is really cool. You got the Bob Marley homage and Master Blaster Jammin', which he nails. Lately is a really pretty ballad. All I Do, really cool. I didn't realize it was written long back in the 60s by Clarence Paul and Morris Broadnax. Really going to be released by Tammy Terrell, but it never was released. So Wonder kind of reworked it for this one. Rocket Love got a really cool dramatic string arrangement. Big, like pensive, well, not big, but shy pensive violins that shudder before bursting forth. Stevie brings in Nathan Watts, I think here for the first time, play some bass guitar and collaborate. He was his musical director from here on out. Does a really great job on I Ain't Gonna Stand For It. That slap bass is awesome. And you got that weird synth. I think it's like a synth that's programmed to sound like a steel guitar or something on that. So weird. And Stevie's drumming on this album is fantastic. He was, and probably still is, an amazing drummer, which kind of gets, forgotten about because of his harmonica playing and his piano playing and his songwriting and his, vocal work. As If You Read My Mind is really cool. It's got this, I don't know, a little like Latin spirit, some slinky, I feel like Steely Dan, like guitar, Celesta, clavinet, more great bass work from Nathan Watts. And, you got a song like Happy Birthday, which is basically responsible for MLK Jr. Day being a day. So pretty impressive achievement there. And I think the worst thing you can say about this album is it's not very cohesive. It does jump around a lot, but Stevie pulls it off. Not quite classic, but pretty close to his glory days. So 4.5 stars for Hotter Than July.
All right. Well, Nathan Watts definitely appeared at least as early as Songs in the Key of Life. He played bass on Sir Duke. And that is my number 6, Songs in the Key of Life. The last of the classic era. It's a big double album plus a 4-song EP that came with it. he almost quit music right before this. He was planning a farewell concert, and then he signed a new contract with Motown, 7 albums, $37 million, the largest in history to that point. I think the title of the record kind of says it all. This is kind of Stevie taking you through all the many sides and emotions of life. The personnel on this record includes upwards of like 130 people, just a huge cast, which is kind of a contrast to the way he had been working prior to that on records where he was playing largely everything and maybe bringing in just a guitar player here and some backing vocals and stuff like that. I get why people absolutely love this record. I think it's incredible myself. Just tons of bangers. Have a Talk with God is awesome. Sir Duke, I Wish, Isn't She Lovely, As. Really, the entire thing is excellent. I really, really like it. The reason it's not higher on my list, simply due to the listening experience. I think it's a little on the long side, and the enormous breadth of material, I think, makes it feel a little almost like compilation-esque. It doesn't have a defining sound. It doesn't have like a great flow to it. It just kind of, like Joe said about Hotter Than July, just kind of bounces around from sound to sound. If I was just scoring the songs individually throughout, maybe it would be a little higher, but I think, it suffers a little from being so long and being so varied that you can't really ever get into like a good groove with it. It really does cover so much ground, though, from jazz to funk to fusion. You've got the song Contusion, which is like this big jazz fusion thing, which is really cool. I can't really think of another song in his catalog like that one. You've also got the big band jazz of Sir Duke, the funk of Black Man. You got big balladry on Joy Inside My Tears, throwback pop on Isn't She Lovely. He just does it all. He does it all really well. I think it's a fantastic album. Deserves the praise that it gets. But comparatively to some of the others around this time, I prefer those just for listening experience. Song to song, maybe this holds up or is better than some of the others that I have ahead of it. But as an album, number 6, 4.5 stars for Songs in the Key of Life.
All right, my number 6, 3.5 for Fulfillingness's First Finale. FFF, I'm going to be calling it from now on. This has more of like a downbeat kind of strolling along feel, almost passive compared to the previous albums, I'd say, but it's very good. There's far less bite on it, except for the song that takes a little shot at Nixon, which he's done from time to time here. You get some religious themes with Heaven is 10 zillion light years away. I really dig the production and atmosphere on this, but at times it's a little bit too soft. Too Shy to Say, I think, has some awesome piano, and that pedal steel is awesome, but again, just a bit vapid. Boogie on Reggae Woman is the exception to these criticisms. It absolutely rules. It's totally awesome. Creepin' has this cool, drowsy, like dreamlike mystique. And then the Nixon track, one of the instances of his lyrics not quite hitting the mark. A little bit contrived, a little nail in the head there. They Won't Go When I Go, pretty and powerful, quiet piece. Bird of Beauty is beautiful and stylish. There's a lot of really good songs on here. So 3.5 stars. FFF, number 6.
All right, number 6, I got Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, his last Motown, I think, flavored album. This one, 1970. So he's kicking off his best decade, but this one's a little bit of a throwback. You got more covers, more songwriting help for Wonder. He's not totally on his own yet, but I just love the feel, the upbeat atmosphere of the whole album. I Never Had a Dream Come True. I think it's a good starter, upbeat. We Can Work It Out. Just a really great, fun, funky, taking the R&B leaning original and making it a little funkier and swinging merrier than the Beatles version. You have Heaven Help Us All from Ron Miller. Stevie just nails. You can't judge a book by its cover, which has maybe like a Sly and Family Stone influence, little stacks on there. Funkier. I think it's a good show of the direction that Wonder would be taking. Really love the drums on Sugar. He's not playing the drums on this yet, so you still got the Funk Brothers, James Jamerson on bass. You got Richard Pistol Allen on drums. And you got some sitar from Eddie Willis. You still have like that old school Motown backing band, but I think Stevie's maturing into the sound better. His vocals are stronger. Don't Wonder Why. I think the emotion in Wonder's voice just fantastic. You got some backing vocals from the originals there. Something to Say, great harmonica showcase. And I don't know exactly when like the Stevie Wonder harmonica sound appears, and I can't fathom why Kramzer doesn't like it, but I love that sound. Just it works in every song he's in. That's why he was in like 800 different 80s songs. Just playing harmonica, he doesn't even need to sing. Just one of those things you immediately know that's his tone, that's his sound. So in all, yes, there's a lot of covers here. Yes, it's not like full Stevie Wonder showcase, everything Stevie Wonder. You still have the backing band, the backing vocals, and the songwriting help. But this is the first time that Stevie really just like nails every track, and everyone's kind of perfectly picked for him and his voice. So 4.5 for this one. Definitely my favorite of the old school Stevie era.
All right, my number 5, another 4.5-star album. I'm going with Fulfillingness's First Finale. I think of Stevie's 70s masterworks, this seems to be the most often forgotten or overlooked of the bunch, probably because it's really hard to say Fulfillingness's, but also because it is, like Kram said, a more mellow record. At times very sparse, Too Shy to Say, and They Won't Go When I Go. The arrangements on those are far sparser than anything he had been doing. Even the hits don't hit with the same immediacy, but they're no less great. I think this is a prime example of a grower of a record. Kind of takes its time to work on you, but there's some really cool stuff going on. That fat synth groove on Boogie on Reggae Woman is great. And You Haven't Done Nothing kind of marries the funk of Superstition with the political criticism of He's Mr. Know-It-All. Creepin' is super cool with its spooky sort of synth sounds and Minnie Riperton's excellent backing vocals. The closing track, Please Don't Go, is really epic with this big choir of voices coming in. You've got Shirley Brewer, Denise Williams, and the Persuasions. And Stevie's laying down this really fat groove on the Moog bass and just going off vocally. The highlight of the record, though, for me is Heaven is 10 Zillion Light Years Away. I really, really love that track. The drums on it have a really similar shuffle to Sir Duke, but the result in the feel of the track is totally different. Some of my favorite vocals as well from Stevie on that song. He pulls such a variety of tones from his voice on this album. And I think one of my other favorite rock singers ever, Glenn Hughes, is often compared to Stevie. He very clearly borrows a lot of Stevie-isms in his singing, and I think on no Stevie album more so can you hear Glenn. There were times listening to this record where I was like, man, that sounds a whole lot like Glenn Hughes, or the other way around. Man, this sounds like exactly what Glenn Hughes is trying to sound like. So very cool stuff. 4.5 stars, really cool record. Fulfillingness's First Finale.
Okay, my number 5, and we're up to 4 stars. I think this is a great album. I've got My Cherie Amour. I just love the emotion and the sweetness of this. It's very old school, so charming, and that's probably the best way to put it. I love the title track, such a sentimentality to it, that sweet old romance, but it's got that, 60s Motown pop kind of way where everything's melodic and catchy as hell. Hello, Young Lovers is really good. And the album's got a little bit of everything, and especially a lot more bass here. Jamerson on bass, really tearing it up, bringing everything to life, making everything pop. Great rhythm throughout. Harmonica's not really there. That's good for me. Don't know how else to explain it. I just don't like the sound of it. So less is more with that. At Last isn't nearly the Etta James version, but it is a really cool reimagining. And again, the bass and the drums are really on fire, and kind of the same way with Light My Fire. I don't think either of these tracks are as good as the original, but it's kind of what you want a cover to be, like pretty different and still interesting, and that's what you get. I think The Shadow of Your Smile is pretty cool and breaks things up really well. I think his vocals are just the star of the show on this album, kind of building off the one before, really becoming a full-flushed artist, singer, album maker, playing everywhere. Little guitar touches on Yester Me, Yester You, Yesterday, I really love. Angie Girl is really sweet. Give Me Your Love, this loungy little stormy jazz ballad. Such a coolness and charm to this album. It's just great. 4 stars. My number 5, My Cherie Amour.
All right, my number 5, and we are in the classics. For me, for most people, this is generally regarded as classic era, and I'm kicking off with the first one from the era, Music of My Mind from '72, one of 2 albums from 1972 for Stevie. And yeah, this is pretty easy 5 stars for me. And just the difference between this and where I'm coming from is so immediate and stark. The sound of the production, the fullness of everything. It's just like it might as well be 20 years in the future as far as the way it sounds. And this is the first one that he collaborated with Robert Margouleff and Malcolm Cecil from the Tonto Expanding Headband. And the Tonto being this giant room-sized synthesizer that basically allowed sounds that no one had ever heard before to be used. And Stevie just saw them in concert and was like, this is my direction. Brings them in. Almost everything on the album is Stevie. There's Buzz Feitan, 1 song electric guitar, and Art Barron on trombone, 1 song, and some background vocals from Sarita and uncredited. And that is it. Everything else is Stevie. The lead vocals, the backing vocals, the drums on everything except for the track that there are no drums. The Tonto synthesizer, piano, Rhodes piano, talk box, harmonica, bongos, clavinet, and Moog bass. It's just all Stevie. And I can't think of another work other than maybe other Stevie Wonder albums where you have just one person doing all of these things and doing them all so incredibly well. Every track on here, I love his use of talkbox on the opener, the Love Having You Around. When he sings Get on My Camel and Ride, and he's doing the weird talkbox stuff in the background. Such a great groove. Superwoman, 8 minutes, 2 kind of different songs pieced together, but they're both incredible. That track, the guitar from Buzz, really awesome. Just some really cool licks going on in the background, and just the way he shifts moods from the first part to the second is incredible. So much emotion, just the climaxes and falls in every note. It's just amazing. I love Every Little Thing About You. You got Stevie being upbeat. The growth and the maturity in the vocals is great here. And that's a song that feels like there's like 30 different people on the track, and it's just Stevie. There's no one else. I think the only misstep, and this is basically his only misstep for the next 5 years. Sweet Little Girl, you got the Fat Albert kind of vocals that just miss the mark. They're not terrible, but it just totally takes you out of this like perfect like bubble of amazingness. And it's like, okay, he's human, like he's not totally perfect. But then he gets right back into it with Happier Than the Morning Sun, this really cool Baroque clavinet driven track, great multi-track vocals on that. Girl Blue, unbelievable drum work, one of my all-time favorite drum songs. Got like this homebrew quality. He's doing all this like tapping. And I have no idea how people do drum stuff, so I don't know what he's doing, but just the way that it's used in the song is really cool and unique. He uses the talk box again. I don't even know how he does it. There's sounds on this album that I have no idea how they're created. Some of it's the Tonto synth, but some of it's not. Some of it's like him using talk box and harmonica in really unique, interesting ways. And Girl Blue, is one of those. Love the way it shifts from minor to major, from verse to chorus. And, it seems so long. Just an okay track. That's probably not one of his best. Keep on Running has a great groove, and Evil, I think, is a good way to finish the track with one of those big emotional, pleading songs. So it's an easy 5 stars for me, and just kicking off one of the greatest runs in music history. Music of my mind. So good.
Okay, my number 4 is Inner Visions. This album finds Stevie tackling deeper lyrical themes from drug abuse on Too High to systemic racism on Living for the City. He goes after Nixon on He's Mr. Know-It-All. Still saves some room on it for a few love songs. And Superstition 2.0, also known as Higher Ground. Don't You Worry About a Thing, super cool. Love the Latin jazz feel. The percussion on it's really great. Stevie delivers a great vocal on that track, really unique in his catalog, that song. My favorite track, though, probably Golden Lady on this one. It has this Latin flair as well, though not as obvious as Don't You Worry About a Thing. I love the chords and the melody, the way it builds in intensity throughout, and how all the key parts intertwine. You've got piano, organ, synth lead, moog bass. It's just so cool how all these parts come together. It's almost working like a brass band or something. I do think this record is somewhat oddly paced, with the slow funk of Too High going into one of his most hushed songs with Visions. It's a really slow start to the record. And that's not even really a criticism, more of an observation. I think it kind of works because I like the way Living for the City comes out of Visions. It's just kind of strange to start the record on kind of such a down feeling. Yeah, it's just a continuation of the excellent work he was doing on Music of My Mind and Talking Book, and just getting more experimental with the synths and his key playing, and just working primarily by himself and just making these incredible tracks. Very cool stuff. 4.5 stars for Inner Visions.
All right. My number 4 is Talking Book, 4 stars. I think it's great. I'm kind of with Jason, though. It's a little underwhelming, and the main reason is there's just a few songs that I'm not crazy about, including You Are the Sunshine of My Life. A bit dry for me and a bit Billy Joel-esque, which is probably the reason for it. But the rest is pretty damn good. There's a great guitar solo on Maybe Your Baby, and just a really rich, exciting sonic experience all over the place here. These albums, this classic stretch, sound amazing. You and I is a really good ballad. Love the synth parts all over this album. Tuesday Heartbreak doesn't quite do it for me, and Big Brother is the other one that doesn't really do it. But bangers like Superstition, awesome as hell. You Got It, Bad Girl is tremendous. There's this bizarre sexiness to it. So when he's on, he's super on. I just think there's a little bit of weakness on it. Blame It on the Sun is wonderful. Just like this all-encompassing album about regret and joy and love, and all of his feelings. Like it seems like this period he was so excited to just be able to do, like, to tell his story instead of do all these covers and everything and be a company man. And it just comes out so well. I Believe is absolutely beautiful and a wonderful closer for the album. So I love the vibe of this album and its honesty and its confessional nature, but I just don't think compared to some of the other albums, it has his most elite and biggest, number of great songs for an album. It's great, but not without its problems. 4 stars, number 4, Talking Book.
All right. It was incredibly difficult to arrange these top 4. They're about as perfect as albums have ever been. And I don't know, they're all perfect. So I can't really decide. This week, though, I'm just going to do whatever I felt this week. This week, my number 4 is Fulfilling his first finale. I think this one, he was unburdened by by trying to make a classic album. He did that already. Talking Book, Inner Visions, people saw those, gave him all the plaudits. He got all the 5 stars. won a bunch of Grammys. Like, he had it made. And on this one, it was after a really bad accident, almost died. He was in a coma, didn't know if he would still be able to create music or anything like that. And I think as a result, this one feels like super personal, almost, I would say inner visions should be outer visions, and fulfilling this as personality should be inner visions, because this is like, talking with God. This is talking with your own soul, less, more so than inner visions, which was, looking out in the world. And I just love the mood and the sound, the lushness of Smile Please, Heaven is 10 zillion light years away, Creepin', like just the aura around it is so pretty and beautiful. You have a track like Too Shy to Say, which brings in my boy Sneaky Pete for some great pedal steel, James Jamerson on acoustic bass. And it's just really understated, just leisurely almost the way it unfolds. And I think it's just so pretty, so beautiful, so unique sounding, rich, lush. Love Creepin'. I said in the Discord that I think it's maybe not my favorite backing vocal performance of all time, but by Minnie Riperton, but I think probably the sexiest sounding backing vocal just ever. Just the way she adds just a little bit to some of the lines is just perfect. Everything else, Stevie, he's doing the Fender Rose, the harmonica, the drums, the bass, the Tonto synthesizer. I love You Haven't Done Nothing, another great attack on Nixon, Jackson 5, doing some backing vocals on that. And Bird of Beauty, I think, is really cool. Latin flavor to that one. Great staccato groove. Another lush one with a ton of backing vocals. I think that's probably the best thing about this album. It's very inner looking, I think, the album in general, but like all the backing vocals give this like cool lift to it all and makes it sound unique in his catalog, and really set a setup for songs in the key of life. Like you hear a lot of stuff that he did on this in that one. And Please Don't Go continues his tradition of having just a epic track at the end of every album. It almost starts off as straightforward pop, but then has this great funky transformation by the end, some grungy vocals. So just another great track. I mean, I don't even know what to say about these. Every track on here is phenomenal, and great. Yeah, this one gets lost in the shuffle a little bit between Inner Visions and Songs in the Key of Life, but it's got its own unique sound that totally sets it apart, and I think it's worth a listen, or 6,000
or 10 zillion.
I'm getting there. I'm probably only at 1 zillion listens, but got my eye on the 10 zillions.
All right. Well, my number 3 is Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, his first studio album of the 70s. I think you can see Stevie taking, or at least being granted, a bit more control here. He produced 2 of the tracks on the record himself, We Can Work It Out and the title track. He co-wrote 7 of the tracks on the record. And after the somewhat stale and sort of cookie cutter My Cherie Amour, this album feels a lot fresher. It's not in any way a rejection of the Motown sound or anything. It's still, very clearly a Motown record, but you can almost sense that he's pushing back a little, just the tiniest bit. But he really delivers, pun intended, the goods. The title track is a banger. The sitar sounds really, really cool. His vocals are incredible. Deeper cuts like Heaven Help Us All is great and start to show a little more of, his social consciousness. Insanely great rhythm section, as always. Jamerson's on all of the tracks except 2. And somewhat oddly, I find the 2 tracks that Stevie produced are the 2 that Jamerson doesn't play on. Used Bob Babbitt instead on the bass. The groove on Sugar is nasty. There's some awesome lead guitar on that track too. Anything You Want Me to Do is killer. Every element of that song is just total fire. The vocals are incredible. The backing vocals are really great and in control. The rhythm section, phenomenal. And I think this is the first record of Stevie's that doesn't really have any duds in the track list. I think it is a wall-to-wall, just great Motown pop R&B tunes, and I love it. And it is 5 stars.
3 5-star albums from Jason coming up. My number 3, Intervisions, 4.5. I think it's really great. Starts off with Too High, and I like it as an opener. It gives you that jazzy nature. I love the key work, the way the drums really control everything. Very cool, very spacey jam. Visions is a nice little lovely piece. Acoustic guitar in there with some delicate warm electric guitar, really nice. Like Talking Book in this whole era, it's kind of just, him pouring out, and he touches bases on everything. It almost works perfectly as like a 5-piece. Really nice, love, drugs, politics, inequality, all getting covered. I love the venom in Living in the City. It's almost the way he sings it, it's almost like he's out of breath and he's going so hard on it. It's really cool. Most of the other tracks have this cool bassy, upbeat, like breeziness, like Golden Lady, really killer bass. Higher Ground with that clavinet groove, so rockin'. Actually prefer RHCP a little bit to this one. Maybe I'm a closet RHCP fan. I don't know. I adore Don't You Worry About a Thing so much with that Latin flair to it. And that beat, what is it? Salsa, rumba, mumba, something, little bossa nova maybe. I don't know. He's Mr. Know-It-All, has this cool cynical beauty to it. Everything sounds great, and the writing just comes across here so much more creative, I think, and the songs are more memorable and interesting compared to Talking Book just a little bit, and has more of my favorite tracks. But it's also just like he's getting this creative voice, and he's still kind of tied to that old like charm and soul and Motownness, but he's doing it just like weirder and more individualistic, and I think it comes across really well. Like it's hard to break out of that era and that bubble and become like just an artist, like just in here and in here, and he nails it. Intervisions, 4.5, my number 3.
Right. My number 3 is going to be Songs in the Key of Life, my winner in 1976. I have it at 9.9 out of 10. I think the negatives for this one is, I don't know about worst track, but Love's in Need of Love Today at 7 minutes is not my favorite opener. It's a little too long, and it's just a little too, I don't want to say boring. It's just not my preferred opener. So it almost loses me in the first song a little bit. I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I got to get through this. And then just it grabs me back. Have a Talk with God is one of my all-time favorite songs. That's Tonto synth, that like bubbling, churning. It completely never heard anything like that. Just like unsettled soul beneath Wonder's great vocal performance. The clavinet, the harmonica is awesome. It's as good as pop devotional has ever been, ever. It's just incredible. Village Ghetto Land with that faux like minuet, like snooty Mozart sound is really cool, really unique, really great way it counterpoints to the lyrics, which are like the rich looking down, saying you should enjoy the things you have, you should be thankful. Really good political satire there. Works lyrically and musically as a 2-for-1. Contusion, jazz fusion, just out of nowhere instrumental. So cool sounding though. Just shows the versatility that he has. Sir Duke, the big band tribute to the great Duke Ellington, with just an unbelievable bass line. My all-time favorites. Nathan Watts, yes, on this one. So I think this is the first one with Nathan Watts where he becomes sort of, Stevie Wonder's confidant and musical director, helping out. He does a great job on a ton of these tracks on the bass. There's just too many classics to list. You forget how many songs are. I forget Isn't She Lovely is on this album. It's on side 3, track 11. It's a phenomenal song. You just forget it's there. You have it ending with As and Another Star, two more just like perfect pop songs. And like I usually don't even get to them because the album's pretty long, and like I rarely have 80 minutes just like sit there and focus on one album. So I do get Jason's point where it feels almost like a greatest hits compilation. Like there's just no come downs at all. It's just like revving, on the red line all the way through. I Wish knocks me off my feet. Pass on Paradise, which of course Coolio samples for Gangsta's Paradise. You have a track like Ordinary Pain, which starts this kind of like simple, little pop R&B number. And then out of nowhere, it shifts into this like female rebuttal of everything the dude said. And it's so unique and interesting. And the first time I heard that, I was like, what am I even listening to? Like, I've never in my life heard anything like this. I've never heard an artist like giving another voice, especially a female voice, to sort of like poke fun at everything he just said. I think it's so cool and unique. Black Man, I don't know how to say Neglica es una historia. I'm singing like he touches on everything. There's politics and social matters and love and God and religion and just every possible thing you can talk about on one album is in here. It's all made at the very highest level of human musical creation. It's just a brilliant work. Maybe, it's tough to get through because it's just long. And I don't know, 80 minutes, long time, not that long for a double album now, but back in those days. So, I'm fumbling around trying to find things to take off, but it's a 9.9 out of 10. It's virtually perfect. But I just have two albums that I consider perfect ahead of it.
All right. My number two is going to be the final album from his original Motown contract, Where I'm Coming From 1971. Doesn't usually get included in his classic period, but from what I was reading, like he there was a clause in his original contract where once he turned 21, he could void the contract. So I think he was kind of playing that hand, and I think virtually did have full artistic control on this one, even though the story really goes that like he won his artistic control with the next contract and that started his classic period. Not entirely true, but I think also musically, I think it's obvious, just way more musically adventurous than anything before it. Both, the songs themselves and the subject matter. There's a real baroqueness to this, using the clavinet a lot, which sounds a lot like harpsichord at times. There's flutes and strings and oboes all over the place. Very lush and warm record. It's an interesting juxtaposition from the kind of European sounds of that Baroque music to the African-American subject matter struggles that he's singing about. Some incredible songs here too. Think of Me as Your Soldier, just breathtaking ballad. If You Really Love Me, just a ray of sunshine. There's amazing horns on it. Take a Course in Happiness is awesome. Almost reminds me of like a Paul McCartney Granny tune. A lot of Beatles influence on this record. Never Dreamed You'd Leave in Summer. I think again, very Beatle-y. Maybe a little Pet sounds in there as well. Sunshine in Their Eyes, I think, is fantastic. The only blemish on it, unfortunately, is I Want to Talk to You, which I feel bad saying because that is maybe Stevie's biggest artistic statement on the record. It's a dialogue between a black man and a Southern white man. And, trying to say a lot, but musically, it's just the least interesting song on the record. And the multiple voices Stevie doing in character just doesn't work. So unfortunately, that song's a miss, but I think this is a perfect example of a record not needing to be like every song's a 5-star to be a 5-star record, because I think the greatness of the other songs easily gets it to 5 stars for me. I think it's fantastic. Should be included in the classic era for sure.
Interesting. My number 2, Songs in the Key of Life, 4.5 star, very close to 5. does run a bit long, and I'm with Joe. Don't like the 7-minute opener. That is one of the weaker songs on the album. It just doesn't quite do it for me, but so much variety and artistic expression here, like you guys said. And much like his classical period, the songs are just these little windows to his soul. Covers everything here: religion, love, politics, and back again. Clavinet and the keys and the bass are just rocking the house everywhere. But there's also like a lot of restraint on it, which I like lots of passion and emotionally tightly knit compositions. A lot of the songs feel like they're ready to burst and never quite do, in a good way, which gives everything like this nuanced intensity and realism. Have a Talk with God is a great example of this. It's tremendous. And I'm kind of shocked that Jason like knocks off points for it feeling like a compilation, because this is just like, it's an all-star album. It's like a White Album where he does a little bit of everything on this album. He flexes all of his muscles, all of his magic tricks come out here. You know, you get that great synthy lead action on Village Ghetto Land. You get the jiviness of Contusion, and the bass is just on fire. Probably the best sounding and best engineered album in his catalog. The mix is perfect. The bass is so warm and vibrant. Kick drum sounds great. You know, the jazzy elements in the guitar and Contusions are just awesome. Sir Duke is fantastic. You know, it's not just like a mix of genres and styles, but, you know, you get him flexing his musicianship, his songwriting, his lyrics, his vocals. Everything is just on point here. I Wish with that bass and build up is so cool. I love the snap and the sound of the snare. I think it gets a little bit weaker towards the end, and I've never been crazy about Isn't She Lovely, actually. But I think Black Man has some really cool parts on it. That really hot synth, getting some disco vibes. You know, the extra stuff on the EP is really cool, even though we're probably not counting that. I think As is awesome, brings that sweetness. Latin flair with another star. It's sensational. I don't even think it's like too long. I don't know what's keeping it from 5, just a few duds in there. And, you know, just his style not being my most favorite style, but it's awesome. I loved listening to it. 4.5 star Songs in the Key of Life.
Right, my number 2, and this one I think went up this week. I don't know if it's really possible. It went from like 5 stars to 5 stars plus. I don't know, but I do have it at perfect 10 out of 10 for Inner Visions, 1973. I think this one, he gets a little more explicitly political, obviously more social emphasis. You know, track like Living for the City really addresses systemic racism, you know, plight of African Americans living in the city with, you know, corrupt cops and everything else. It starts it off with Too High, real jazzy, you know, weird number. It's completely opposite of the way Talking Book starts with Sunshine of Your Love. And this one is like really, you know, looking at drugs and the way they affect people, and it has this really almost cold, like, you know, jazzy groove to it. So you kind of starting off with, okay, this is a different album than Talking Book. This one's really going for the cold, harsh truths, visions. You get the epic Living for the City. You bring it back a little bit with Golden Lady, which it's one of his more like 70s sounding tracks. It almost could be an Elton John song, with that really beautiful piano on all the different, you know, multitudes of keys on there. You have piano Fender Rhodes, the Tonto, and then you have Clarence Bell with Hammond organ. You got a little acoustic guitar in there as well. Just really beautiful sounding. Side 2 gets a little more fun, a little more upbeat, higher ground. Don't You Worry About a Thing with its bright Latin flair. Even the political, the most explicitly political, He's Mr. Know-It-All, which is a great attack on Richard Nixon. It's very upbeat, despite him, you know, just tearing down Nixon at every level, which is great. Really great bass line from Will Weeks on that. And just the way that it ramps up and just turns into this giant, like, big chorus sounding with hundreds of vocals, and but it's all Stevie Wonder. really incredible way that he builds his backing vocals into the songs, and he's bouncing off of them and harmonizing them. And it sounds like an entire choir behind him singing with him. But it's just Stevie. And I think on this album in particular, he just flexes every inch, every bit of his musicianship to a whole nother level, I think, even than Talking Book. Higher Ground is similar to Superstition, and he did some political stuff on Big Brother, on Talking Book. And I mean, they're so close. And there's really nothing at all I can say that's bad about this album. So I don't know. I think lyrically it's his strongest. Musicianship, probably his strongest. His drum work is just incredible throughout. So it's just a matter of which songs I like better. I'm going to go with Talking Book as my number one, but Intervisions, it's a perfect 10, 5 stars. So, just a masterpiece.
All right, so last one left for me is Music of My Mind from 1972. I think it's an album that arrives at the perfect intersection of him having some experience and his influences, inspiration, circumstances, the first one under his new contract. He was given full artistic control. It's the first one with Margalef and Cecil using their Tonto synth, like Joe said. But even though he has all this new control over direction and stuff, he doesn't go off the rails into crazy experimentation. I think he does a really good job of keeping really good songwriting at the core of the sound. Plays with a lot of different genres here, like Motown, R&B, funk, rock, psych, pop, jazz, electronic music, even some progressive elements on a track like Superwoman, where you get like 2 halves of the song where it kind of shifts halfway through. Incredible that he's still only 21 when this was released, his 14th studio album. The soul on I Love Every Little Thing About You is just incredible. Like you guys were talking about earlier, just effortless. It just sounds like it's so easy for him. The drumming is incredible there. Happier Than the Morning Sun is great. I love the multi-track vocals. Keep on Running is awesome, just breakneck pace, just flying on the clavinet. The backing vocals again are awesome. Tons of great backing vocals on all of these classic records. Closes with Evil, which is a great song. Stevie pleading with Evil, asking why he's done so much damage to the world, and it just builds to this rapturous release of anger and frustration. Just a really great way to close it out. 5 stars. Again, you guys have mentioned it as the weak track, and I saw a lot of people dissing it on the Discord. Sweet Little Girl. That song doesn't actually bother me that much. I think the lyrics are kind of throwaway. I don't think the lyrics are not good, but I think it still has a really cool groove. I don't mind the voice on that track as much as I do on the track on Where I'm Coming From.
My number one, I feel like this is one of my most surprising number ones. And I got it at 5 stars, Hotter Than July. This album surprised the hell out of me and knocked me on my ass. I thought it was so friggin' good. It is a pop masterpiece. Great hot opener with a sick hook on guitar and bass with Did I Hear You Say You Love Me? Everything's fun, light, and catchy, fusing so many things, R&B, pop, big band stuff, jazz, a little bit of rock. So cool. All I Do is also really catchy, and I love that steady beat behind it. All of the beats on this album are just like perfect. Like they're not over the top. They just like get your body moving. Just really fun and easily accessible. He's doing like disco influence at times. Just such a melting pot. The production touches everywhere are awesome. Lots of passion. I love the way he sings Rocket Love. I Ain't Gonna Stand For It is so cool. And he's just like having fun on this album. Like I love the classic period and how artsy he is and like introspective, but coming off when, everyone, dissed his soundtrack album, he was just like, screw it. I know pop. I know how to play tunes. I know all the instruments. I'm just going to go out there and kill it. And that's exactly what he does. So infectious and tight. The bass is phenomenal everywhere. The rhythm section is just off the hook. Especially if You Read My Mind, you get the reggae with Master Blaster, just letting go here, and it's really nice. Do Like You is great. Cash in Your Face, really cool. And you get that ballad towards the end with Lately, just perfectly put second to last, and then Happy Birthday at the end. This whole album is just a fun, tight, impressive romp, and I was totally blown away by it. I love listening to it. It's the only album I've like had on since doing this whole project. Came out of left field, and I'm happy I did. I liked all of these new albums I listened to that I gave good scores to, but this one was very choice for me. I know it's out of left field and not one of the conventional picks, but I feel like still got to respect it a little bit for me. And it's also maybe the one that's most tailored toward my like. So I love it. 5 stars, hotter than July, baby.
That is surprising. I kind of forgot what you had talked about. I was like, what the hell is number 1? So I was like, oh, hotter than July. I was hoping it wasn't going to be like the jazz soul of Stevie Wonder, and I just forgot about it or something. That's fine. I'm fine with Hotter Than July. I'm fine with Music of My Mind as well. Those are both great records. My favorite, though, is going to be Talking Book, his 15th album, which is crazy. What a late bloomer he was, I guess. But he, went through all the stages. He started as a musical genius 12-year-old. Then he got into Motown, and then he, created basically an entirely new sound with the help of the Tonto synths and everything. And I think on this album, it's just the pinnacle for me. I think it has the best songs. I think it created all these new genres and just all these sounds that had never been played before and never been done before. I think were first heard here. I like You Are the Sunshine of My Life. I think it's a little cheesy, a little, lightweight, but I think it's great. I love the way that he doesn't even start the song. He's the third voice you hear on it, which I think is really cool. He really hits the social stuff hard on Superstition and Big Brother. He gets into, political injustice. His love songs, I think, are the strongest they've been, will ever be, with I Believe. Blame It on the Sun's just gorgeously pretty. I don't know, maybe Your Baby has that like higher voice, pitch shifted experimentation that you wouldn't hear again until Prince did it, in 15 years on, Sign of the Times. And here he's doing all this incredible stuff, the fusion of funk and R&B and pop. I hear like Michael Jackson and Prince and everyone else who came after him taking these templates that Stevie, did on this album into their own work. You and I is just a really pretty ballad. Tuesday Heartbreak, just super joyous. We got the hand claps. A rare guest musician, the alto sax from David Sanborn. And it's the teasing backing vocals from Denise Williams and Shirley Brewer, fantastic. You Got a Bad Girl. It's this really strange, otherworldly atmosphere. It's spacey, it's funky. It's using the new Tonto synthesizer to create something that just never sounded like that before. Superstition, I've heard it a million times, and I think it still has all the power that it did the first time I heard it. I love the iconic clavinet part, that really great, strong move bass, incredible drumming. Eric Clapton called Stevie Wonder the greatest drummer of all time. I wouldn't go that far, but I'm always blown away by how good and how unique every drum part is. Big Brother got that sort of, faux classical style. Any song with the horn or clavinet, I love. And just a trenchant piece of political criticism there. And I think the reason I love this so much is just the way it bounces around. No track really is the same. And he's just spreading his wings and hitting all these different things, looking for another pure love. That guitar from Buzz Feitan, the harmonics in the beginning, and then you have Jeff Beck just popping in for a great little solo. And then, you end it with I Believe, When I Fall in Love, It Will Be Forever, one of my all-time favorite songs. Just the build of emotion, the use of Moog bass to build tension, that ringing piano chord that's slightly off time right before he breaks into the When I Fall in Love chorus. And it's just another track that, it sounds like there's 100 people in the room. It's just Stevie. Like, it's just Stevie bouncing off himself, harmonizing with himself. And then it breaks in that little coda where it's like, yeah, I can still get funky. Yeah, I can still, be cool in case you thought I was going too soft. So I just think it's perfection. It won in 72 for me. You'll hear about it again when we do our all-time favorite albums. So, Talking Book, my number one Stevie Wonder album.
Well, we all got the 5 stars. I thought it was a really enjoyable week. I had a lot of records. I think 11 at 4 stars and up. So yeah, a lot of Stevie to enjoy. Started to get to be a bit of a slog near the end of the journey, but that tends to happen with these longer discographies. Final thoughts?
Really glad did this. I mean, would have never listened to Hotter Than July probably on my own. And it was just great getting the context of like his whole timeline. Like I said at the beginning, and a lot of really good stuff. I mean, it seems like if you turn it off after 30 minutes of this video, it was like, oh, all these 2-star albums. Like, well, out of 26, I liked half of them.
Yeah, I mean, I had 15 4-star albums. I don't think there is another artist with that many. For me, I just think he's the most talented single artist ever. And I love all his work and all his stages. Just the things he did on bass and piano, and just blows my mind. Drums, like, most people probably don't know how good of a drummer he is, but he's just fantastic, and just love it. Once I got through those first like 5 albums, I was just in heaven the rest of the week, and probably won't stop listening to Stevie Wonder even though we're done with his discography. I'm gonna go back. Can't keep away. Can't quit him.
All right, so let us know what you think of Stevie. What are your favorite records? Where did we screw up our lists? Drop your own list down in the comments. Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. In addition to all of that, check the video description for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our website, our merch store, and our Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. Again, hit the like button, subscribe. We're coming up on 10K. Thanks for watching. Check back tomorrow for our top 10 favorite Stevie Wonder songs. We'll see you then.